I don't know so much about happiness, but contentment for sure. I've been well for the past 2 years, more than anything else, and it was something I needed. Um, Sobriety and the program and all that. A lot of it was I was reluctant, you know, but uh, it definitely got me. It got me better, um, and I really don't know. I don't know if I expected it not to work, or I think I was just afraid of not being able to get high and change the way I feel when I wanted to feel that different. But this program and just my recovery journey, a lot of it was authentically finding out that it works and that it is a better way to live, being sober and being in a state of self improvement 9 times out of 10, and also keeping things, you know, on the schedule to do, staying busy. And so I feel good about a lot of the things that my life uh, is about now. And I'm doing justice to the pieces of me that before all of it got messed up were actually headed places. Because I've always kind of had, people knew, I guess, and I even knew myself. They knew I was kind of I had the potential to do good things or accomplish things, and maybe even really help the world in a way, or just whatever I ended up getting involved in, I'd be pretty good at. But no matter how many opportunities I had, I I myself, it seemed like I was programmed to self-destruct. And so there were genuine parts where I was parts of my life where I was sabotaging myself before I'd even realized that was doing it and could commit to it. And this has given me enough focus and enough structure to start getting back to some of those things that, where I'm like, well, I am pretty good at this, and I am pretty passionate about that, and so um, yeah, I'm coming back to life slowly, and there was a lot of damage that needed to be repaired for sure. Yeah.
All right. You want to introduce yourself?
Uh, well, my name is Philip. Philip Lloyd Peterson is my full name. That's my real name. So, uh, and I've gone by quite a few other names, but Philip Lloyd Peterson. That's my name. And I
Before we started talking, you mentioned that a good title would be uh, Program to Self-Destruct.
yes, yeah.
Why do you think that that is an appropriate title for this interview?
Well, it's probably the it's probably the best way that I've found to describe myself, um, on my own will. Uh, my own intentions typically will lead me to self destruct, and I think I was procrastinating the inevitable without the intervention that ended up happening with the jail and the mental health court, and kind of being forced to get back on track. I was headed I was headed for destruction. Truly. Um, the reason I say that about myself, that I'm programmed to self destruct, that I'm hardwired to self destruct, it's just that's kind of what I've noticed in my life. I start things, I get good at them and stuff like that, and then there's these certain aspects of my character that come out, and I mess up relationships with people. I mess up opportunities, um, or I just give myself a reason not to even try anymore, not to show up, not to stay consistent, and people lose faith in me, or they lose belief in my ability to keep these things going. Um, and in a sense, yeah, I withdraw at the wrong times. But there's also a side of me too in my drug use where you know there's a sometimes people are like, oh, he's gonna crash out or I would get to feeling like that a lot when I was high. It was when I was high or when I was running around doing things that pertain to drugs. Sometimes I would just commit to like, I know where this is headed. I know where this could go, and I just don't care, and it was genuine. And that's a full 180 from what I really should be thinking about or what I should be trying to do. Um, I'm intelligent enough and I'm put together well enough at my best to do good things to help, maybe even help other people, or to just be somewhere where I'm functional, where I'm serving a purpose. And the stuff I was into, it really was. It's like a robot or something. Robot's made to do this kind of job or whatever, but he's just got a short somewhere. And for me, that short would always come around when it didn't need to, And then somehow I'd start miss, you know, uh, I'd start just misfiring, and before you know it, the robot's head explodes. You just can't compute it anymore. And so that's kind of how I look at my life when I'm just doing things on my own without any kind of direction. I have to apply myself, and it's ironic that I would admit that because my both of my parents and my grandmother before she died, they said that to me so much, and they were right. I am a person who has to apply themselves because and it has to be a choice. If I apply myself, then I'm good to go. You don't really have to worry about me. But if I don't, I get lost fast, and eventually, that could result in my destruction, and it almost did.
So let's start there. Can you tell me a little bit about your early years growing up?
Yeah. Well, so my parents were both a little older when they had me. My dad was military, and he got out of the military after 6 years, but he decided to stay where he was stationed in Germany. And my mom, she went to business school, and I mean, she's an excellent cook, but she was a chef at different restaurants. But my mom actually has a natural knack for being in the food service industry, and so both of them were already kind of grown and independent when they kind of came back in contact. And I was a product of that. And they were like high school sweethearts at one time. My dad ended up leaving to go overseas, but I guess they just kind of got reunited, and that's where I came, you know, and so I that's where I kind of came into the picture, and so you know, it's funny because a lot of times they say that you have to kind of be grown. It takes two to tango, and that should be like a complete thing. Like you both should be at a place where you're ready to have children. But ironically enough, financially and stability wise, both my parents were ready to have children, but neither one of them were ready to have children. And so I was a product of that. I, they were never married. I'm an only child. Well, I have a half sister, but this was from years ago in Germany, and she's never been to the states, and I don't think my father's talked to her since she was like 3, and that was its own thing.
So you
Um,
raised as the only child.
I was raised as an only child, yeah, and it was always a single parent household, but they had split custody. So every other weekend or every weekend, I would see my dad. Usually it was every other weekend. I'd go visit with him, and I would either go to school from his house or he would drop me off Sunday night. And me and my dad were close. I got along well with my dad, but it was kind of distant for the first 12 years. My mom, it was your typical single mother, single parent kind of dynamic. I'm a bit of an old soul, so there was never really much my mom had to worry about in terms of like I don't know, like me blowing up the house while she was gone. Um, as a matter of fact, my mom be kind of she kind of became a stickler for my conduct in society. So it was like she was actually talking to teachers a lot, and she was really heavy on me making good grades, and she was a bit of a disciplinarian in that aspect. But we were close. But my mom wanted the best for me. She didn't want me to be a victim of society and all of that. And she wanted what was best for me, but she also wanted me to conduct myself in a way where I was poised for the best in life, no matter what kind of situation I would have came from. And that was interesting. Her mom, my grandmother was German, and so my mom was very very light skinned, and we lived with her probably the second half of my life. So from 1 to 6, it was like me and my mom kind of working things out, and then from 6 to about 9 or 10, we lived with Umi. And so, and I would still visit my father's on the weekends, or every other weekend. Um, and living with Umi wasn't really bad. She had a big house, but it was both of them, and they really wanted me to not just be like, and I mean, these were conversations they had with me. They were like, I know your friends and stuff are doing this, but we don't want you to just be another black person. We want you to kind of, you'll speak with good English in the house, and you know, you'll have respect, you'll have manners, and there's a certain way to do things. And when that didn't go the way it was supposed to, I mean, it was serious. Um, they weren't abusive, but just they watched me very diligently. I was the only thing, I guess, the living thing in the house that you know was really of any concern other than just the normal stuff. And so they groomed me in a way, and there was an expectation, you know. Now, when I was about 10, well, nine going on into the age of like 12, my mom ended up moving out of Umi's house. And that was kind of part of the deal. I found out later was that mom was really just there to get on her feet. And so she got enough money saved and we got an apartment. And so it was a 2 bedroom, and that was where I lived with my mom until the age of 12. My mom lost her job though, and that's when things kind of got out of sorts. And it's European family, so there was a lot of drinking. And my grandmother and my mom both kind of struggled with drinking. My grandfather was actually, I mean, he was a drinker. I don't really know if you'd say he was an alcoholic. I don't know if he ever admitted that or if he ever went to any kind of, you know, ever sought help. But he died from drinking. He was in the army, and that's how him and my grandmother met. He was stationed in Germany too, but he died. He drank himself to death, and he died before my mom. I think it was before my mom and Auntie Katja actually grew up. So that was kind of, it was a single mother and a single mother situation. That was the dynamic of the household. Me and mom got our own place, and we were staying there, and yeah, I mean, the drinking and stuff like that kind of became more of an issue. But I found out later in life that there were other things that my mom was going through. And, you know, uh, she was having a really, really hard time, and she didn't know how to ask for help. And, I guess mental illness and stuff like that has been something that maybe the family kind of has an idea of in the past, but we didn't really know the specifics on anybody, like maybe trying to go to a therapist or anything. And so my mom, I watched from the ages of 9 to 10. It was just kind of a slow decline, and it got to be where it started becoming a place that wasn't really good to live. And there were a lot of different eyes on her. Of course, my dad had split custody, so I mean, there was kind of like, why doesn't it? There were things that were coming up where my dad was kind of seeking some accountability, like, why has Philip got this situation? Stuff I wasn't aware of, and it was a lot of pressure, a lot of that was a rough time in my life because then there was me, and what I was going through and how I was kind of growing up and stuff, and it escalated, you know. My mother and my father never really saw eye to eye when it came to me. They were in love, but when I came along, there was something totally different to worry about. Um, and now, I mean, nowadays, now that I'm older, and they actually communicate now, and it's interesting. Mom comes to visit sometimes, and when they get together, they're, it's almost like, you two get along great. You guys are almost like you guys might, try and get back together or something. And I'm quick to almost ask like, what happened? And then they both just look at me and they're like, you motherfucker, like you haven't, And so, and they mean it in the best way, but it's almost true. You can't really deny the truth in that. That sometimes, if it wasn't even something that was expected, and I was a love child, that my mom decided to keep. Whew, especially two adults coming at it, they're like, well, we got to do it, so we're going to do it right, and then you start realizing that you don't agree on everything, and so that escalated though, and my mom, she checked out, and so when I was 12, I ended up going to live with my dad, and that's where I grew up. I became a man. In a way, in retrospect, that was the best way it could have happened because I had the care and the nurturing, and then it kind of dissipated in its own time. As a young child, I had that from my mother, and I had the idea of my father, the interaction with my father, and then when I became older and I had to start becoming a man, then okay, my father steps in now, and he's like, okay, well. The transition though was regrettable for sure. Yeah, I really wish I didn't have to see my mother like that, and I wish she didn't have to go through that. I talk to her a lot now, and she was going through something, and it was a lot of it was out of her control, and despite the the abandonment issues you would think I would have to deal with, it was understandable that she needed to get herself together, and it still is. I don't blame her. I've abandoned a lot more for a lot less, and me personally, and I don't really feel like she abandoned me. I feel like she knew that sometimes if you're sick, it's best not to contaminate the water if everybody's swimming. You can do more harm sometimes by staying around somebody in a bad state than by getting yourself together and if you can trying to come back and I actually I she might not never realize it, but I respect her and I appreciate her for what she did more than I think it's almost possible to imagine. You think a kid be like, never forgive your mom for leaving or whatever. I'm like, no, I not only forgive her, but I relate. And I'm glad that she got herself together. She's doing great now. And I like where things are and I like how they worked out. Like I said, I became a man with my father. And so that was the rest of my childhood. Yeah.
How did the separation with your mom at age 12 impact you?
Well, there were a lot of short term and long term. You got to understand when it happened. Like I said, mom was kind of on this downward spiral, and I remember um, that I was starting to show signs that these things were affecting me. And I mean, a lot of people do these studies and stuff, and they're like, oh well, when people's kids parents split up, it can cause them to want to act out, and it causes behavioral issues, and sometimes so there is that aspect to it. And because I was starting to act out in school, I was starting to have more issues, but there was a lot of pressure I was holding on to, a lot of stress, and I really didn't know how to how to manifest it properly. I was immature because I was a child, and so there was a lot of stuff that I had to learn, and that I'm still learning about how to express, um, not really feeling good and not knowing how to, and how to bring that internal thing out to the light and make sense of it. Um, but you got to understand the transition happened because I ran away one morning. I was on the bus. I had just gotten into middle school, so I had done sixth grade, and I just went through summer break, and this was like the first week or two maybe back from summer break, and I was a seventh grader. I was going to RMS when that was still a place, and I was on the bus on my way home, and there was this kid, and I mean I've always been a big guy, but I was a big kid for the time. I was a little tall, you know, for a kid, but I was also heavy set and I was big boned, and so, but I was chubby too. I was a fat kid. And but there was this other kid, and he was a fat kid too, and I mean. I remember I just wasn't really feeling good that day. Like I was kind of stressed out. I was actually worried about my mom too, in a big part of my mind. That was a big stressor for me. I was like, I don't know how mom is doing, and I'm worried about her, And I think at this point, she had been asleep for like 3 days or something like that, on up and on the couch, and she was just up and down, and she wasn't really, And so I was just kind of worried about her, and I knew, yeah, there was just a lot of stuff going on, and I wasn't really fitting in. It was seventh grade, and wasn't much food. I didn't really have a whole lot of clothes, and I was starting to become worried about my own welfare, and that wasn't a normal thing for me. But I was trying to hold it all in and keep it together, and make it look good. Well, I mean, I was on the bus, and this kid, I guess, had this idea he was gonna pick on me, and I was never really a kid that got bullied much. Uh, I've been in fights and stuff in school, but I was just always a bigger kid. So, I mean, maybe the occasional fat joke or something. I know the girls in school always kind of gave me a hard time because I don't know what it is, but they just always kind of would pick on me and stuff. But other than that, I wasn't bullied. Um, and this kid was genuinely attempting to bully me on the school bus, and I mean, he was poking me and this, that, and the other, and he was bigger than me, and so, but I was, big too, and so I was kind of looking. I was like, man, leave me alone. I'm not really feeling it, and I had longer hair at this time, and it was almost like a nappy-ish afro, uh, and he spit, and I'm thinking, because I mean, this kid was a slop bucket. I mean, he was a big, fat kid, but it was almost cartoonish, just this whole exchange between me and him, and we're on the school bus ride home, and we're not too far from my stop, and he spit, and I thought he just did something outrageous like spit in the in the aisle on the bus, because he would have been the type to do some just obnoxious stuff like that. But this girl behind me was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "You got gum in your hair." He just spit his gum in your hair. And I mean, keep in mind, he's sitting on me, and I'm by the window. And so I looked at him, and it's something snapped in me that day. I just wasn't having it, and I'm not the violent type. I'm not the type to, I'm not a rock head. You know what I'm saying? But that day, I lost it. I snapped, and I got up. I pushed him into the aisle. I'm kicking him and stuff. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And I mean, it was like I had a rage moment, and the bus driver actually, he stopped the bus, and so I kind of fell into the aisle, and he fell further into the aisle, and he picked me up, and I'm kicking dude in the face while he's trying to yank me, and he threw me off the bus. The bus driver threw me off the bus and said, "Walk home," and Luckily, I wasn't too far away from my apartment, but this has never happened to me. So, all of this stuff, but I knew like the school I was going to, like I was going down. I knew the next day, whenever everything added up, like I was going to be in trouble. My mom, like I said, she was a disciplinarian. This was unacceptable already. So I'm walking home and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get my mom up, tell her about this. And my mom was the type, somebody puts their hands on you, you fight back and stuff. So I knew I wasn't going to get in trouble for that, but I knew I was going to get in trouble for getting suspended or whatever. I knew it was because she was a specific type of, and I was like, so I gotta, and I didn't even know how to communicate with her. She had been kind of knocked out for the past 2 or 3 days, just, um, and I went home and I told her, and she got up and I mean, she wasn't really mad. She was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, and she was like, "Jesus." So and I was like, "Look, mom, when I got kicked off the bus, I had to walk home. I was like, when I go to school tomorrow, I'm going down for that. You know what I'm saying? Like they're probably gonna suspend me, and it's gonna be bad." And she was like, phew. And so she got up and she was just kind of coming to, she was waking up and stuff. And so I was like, well, shoot. And every day when I got home from school, I'd call my dad anyway. Because I'd call my dad every day. I'd call him when I came home from school, I'd call him at night. I'm always been close to my dad. I get on the phone with him, and that's when my mom, she got upset because she was like, how is this going to work out with the things she was going through with, my dad at the time and the discipline, splitting up the discipline routine. And she had snapped at me while I was on the phone with my dad, and that was the last straw for me because I was just trying to talk to my dad, and she would nudge me with her foot like, "Don't tell him that, don't tell him that," and I'm like, I'm talking to my dad, uh, and I was getting older at this time too, so it was starting to get to the point where I would start standing up to my mom a little bit more in ways. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't be like, yes, ma'am. It would sometimes because it was me and her in that apartment together. I'd be like, you know what I'm saying? Just kind of offhanded, just like, you know, eh, there's no way I'm gonna let you, and so that was something we were both kind of dealing with too. It was like, he's starting to grow up, and well, this particular day, I was like, Dad, I gotta call you back. Click, and I hung up the phone, and I went off. Like I was like, Mom, you know what I'm saying? Why do you always gotta do some stupid? And I felt myself escalating when I was like this, because I was looking at her, and I was almost starting to get like, and I went off on her in a way. I was like, you always gotta do some stupid shit when I'm on the phone with my fucking dad. And she was like, and I was like, you know what? And she got up. I mean, she got up quick, and she was like, I can't believe it. And it was a argument that had been building up for so long, and it was something that it was honestly like my mom was like, you know what, Philip, I deserve to hear this from you. And I'm not even. Her mind wasn't even in a place where it was like, how dare you talk to your mother like this? It was almost like I get it, but damn it if I'm not trying, you know what I'm saying, to do the right thing anyway. And there's no way you, Philip, of all people, would hit me with this. It was supposed to be me and you getting through this together. She was, it was like you were supposed to stick with me because I'm your. It was more like I'm your mother. Like don't turn on me too. And I get that now. I get that now that I'm older. It was almost like, and it was just this polarizing moment. And when I said it to her, I saw her reaction and I saw the way she kind of folded, and I was like, oh, so because I usually you grow up thinking, wow, she's gonna hit you hard and fast. You say some crazy shit like, but she was at a place where she was like, damn, I know it's kind of messed up around here. You know what I'm saying? And but once I got too fired up, she was like, and she got up and she grabbed me. She picked me up, and my mom, you gotta understand, my mom's like 5'9", 5. She's my height now, but back then she would have been taller than me, and my mom's a sturdy. I mean, like her and Umi both, and Auntie Katja's like six something. She's like 6'2" or 6'3". They're German, just hardcore, well built, strong women, and they're intimidating to a lot of men, and I've seen it to this day. You know, they have just this presence about them. All three of them. They weren't just three ladies. You know what I'm saying? They were like three women. You know, and powerful women, and that's what I come from on my mom's side. And so I was already intimidated because she was bigger than me, but I was getting older. You know, and but this day, you know, so she picked me up and she slammed me into the shelf. I remember it, and you know how like you know, in the fight scenes, you know, you're fighting with a dude and they hit you or whatever, and they fall on the bar and then they clean the bar with them. They take them and drag them and just clean the. It was kind of like that, but this was with the furniture in the house. She hit me. She she didn't hit me, but she picked me up and she slammed me in like three consecutive walls, and then because you know the apartment, you know, you had to turn a corner and you went into the hallway and there was a bathroom and there was my bedroom, and she just threw me. She threw me like a drunk, like you throw them old school drunks in the jail cell back in the old western. She's like, get in there, you fucking. And she did. She did me like that. My back hit the bed. You know, and it took the wind out of me. I mean, she did me dirty, but in a way I deserved it because you can't really talk to your mom like that. You know what I'm saying? But it was almost like, like that shit hurt. It hurt me the way I probably hurt her. It was just a colliding of energies, you know. And so, you know, and I now I'm smiling when I say this because hindsight is 2020. There's a lot of this stuff that it comes full circle later on in the years. You realize all of the things that get you sometimes to where you're at now. It's amazing because there was a whole lot of stuff that built up to that, a whole lot, and that with that specific day, I rarely talk about to this day. I really don't talk about that a lot. I'm being honest and I'm being kind of open because of this, and I want but yeah, that day was that was intense. That was some heavy shit that happened that day. No cap, and it was just it was a lot. Um, you know, and so, but anyway, the next morning I ran away. I was like, I'm out of here. I had a cell phone. It was a prepaid cell phone that my mom had gotten me because I had a bike, and she would allow me to kind of like go to the library, the Hardin County Library and stuff. And I was starting to become more independent. I was 12 anyway at that time, so I could stay at home by myself. And when she would have a little job or when she would work and stuff, I'd come home by myself. I had a house key and I had a prepaid cell phone, so when I was out, I could call her. If she called me, I better pick up the phone. You know what I'm saying? There were rules to it, but it had minutes on it. You could get that pay card and put the minutes on it. I called my grandma and I called my dad, and both of them were down with the they were look they they knew what they had known that it was going to escalate to that point anyway. And then my grandmother's my dad's mom. I'm really close to her, and so is my dad. And so there were a lot of weekends when I was over there. To add context, it was like we were all kind of talking like this has got to come to a head soon. Like this is kind of, and it wasn't even like my mom was the big old bad guy. It was just like this ain't. I was telling him, I was like, I'm concerned. Like I don't know, something with mom just ain't. It ain't adding up. And she's not doing good. So we knew at this point that something was gonna happen. The next morning, though, I called grandma. I said, "Look, I'm coming over there." I said, "I gotta get out of here." Last night, it was this bad. It was this bad kind of deal, and I gotta get out of here, grandma. And she was like, "Okay, okay, you got a way over here?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And she was like, "All right, well, just not gonna. I'll be here, And I said, basically, it was to the effect of like, I'm gonna try and sneak out because she's asleep. I said, so I don't, I said, honestly, I'm scared. Like, if she finds out that I'm gone, you know what I'm saying? And she's like, just come on over here, we'll figure it out. And I called my dad the same morning and I told him he was at work. That was crazy, but he was like, Okay. I was like, all right, Philip, you know what I'm saying? He was like, you know what this means? Because there was this plan we had that when I was, I think, 13 or something, we were going to try and petition the court to where my dad got full custody. Because at 13, I think it was the age back then where you could, it was 13 or 15, it was something like that, where you could talk for yourself and say, on your own, you get up in front of the court and say, "Oh, this is what I want." And we figured that that was going to be the best case scenario for my dad to get custody, is if I said it, you know. And but when this happened, it was like, ooh, he was like, if this goes south, not only he was, but he was like, all right, and so that was it was just this whole thing, and I got on my bike, and I remember my mom was asleep on the couch, and I got my clothes on and everything, and I opened the door, and my mom got up, and I was shook. You know what I'm saying? I was shook. But it was how like the movies are where almost like where the dude's beating his wife or whatever, and she like one night she gets up, but it's like every she has to sneak out. It was almost that same kind of intensity, but it was in real life. I was like, ooh, I didn't want her to wake up at all because I just didn't know what was how her reaction would be and so. But she got up. She was like, she was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Mom, I'm going to the library or whatever." I said, "I'm just gonna go." And she was like, "You got your cell phone?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "You got your house key?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "I'll probably be back, an hour or two." I said, "I'm gonna just go up there. There was a book I was gonna check out." She was like, "Okay." She felt back asleep. I looked down and I was like, "I love you, mom." And she was like, "I love you too." And I went down the stairs. I closed that door. I locked the door. Uh, and I got on my bike. Yeah, and I took off. And I remember I had like tears in my eyes because it was a lot. That one moment, it was kind of like breaking through a force field that your life is contained in. It takes a bit of force sometimes to do that. When you have moments like that in your life where I really don't have to do this, but I should, and I'm taking a risk, and you have to take that jump. Sometimes when it's like that, it's almost like there's this bubble that's trying to keep you in the comfort of the situation and keep you in the security of what you know, and breaking through that actually it's I don't know, it comes from somewhere else, not your physical body, but that happens. You break through and you can feel it as you're getting away from it, and there's almost this fear that starts to go away the further you get from it. And I felt that for the first time in my life on that bike. And I made it to Grandma's house. I was out of breath and stuff, and I put my bike in the garage. Um, and we got quiet, because Grandma was like, you know what I'm saying, just we're gonna hang out for a little bit and stuff. And no, I called Dad and told him I was there, but you know what? Not 30, 45 minutes after I made it there, Scuba Steve, boom, like mom's in the driveway, she's got some friend with her or whatever, and they're like on the windows, on the door, do 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 do. And I mean, this for me was like, yo, I mean, it was like escaping the Gestapo on Crystal Night. And you swear you made it out, but they're just that you see that flashlight or whatever, and then somebody just grabs your shoulder, and you're like, oh, and it's actually a SS officer, like you never made it out, I was like, oh, and I I knew I was in trouble, and I knew, but Grandma was smart. She was like, "Don't." And I've never seen Grandma get live before, but Grandma was like, "Philip, I swear to God, as I, as I'm sitting here right now today, she was like, if you get up and you go and open that door for any reason, I will slap the shit out of you." And I don't even know if those were her exact words, but it was almost like I've never seen my grandmother get up. She is the most peaceful woman, the most patient, soft spoken to this day. But it was the way she saw it in motion, and she was like, "Philip, now look, I'm gonna get on the phone, and this, that, and the other, and try to figure this out. If you move and if you open this door, whew. So she was like, just stay still. Don't say nothing. And I think she called my dad. She didn't even call the police, but my mom was making such a racket that the neighborhood, somebody had to have called because the police showed up. And they didn't arrest her or nothing. They were just like, ma'am, you know what I'm saying? We don't know what the hell is going on in there. You got to get out of here. You know what I'm saying? And it was crazy because I think that the police officer had kind of understood the nature of what was going on. And he knew it was delicate, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I got her out of there. She that was the last I had ever even heard my mother's voice. Now this is 12 years old. Because of that whole thing, I didn't know what became of my mom. But there was a court process, there was emergency protective custody, and that was like a whole thing where my dad would have ended up having to return guardianship, um, or custody of me. Like he would have had to hand deliver me to my mom if the emergency protective custody thing didn't go, because my mom had, it was like joint custody. And I remember that me and my dad were kind of like walking on eggshells because we were both like, if this is the thing we were worried about if it didn't go right. Well, apparently my mom in the meantime, Carmen San Diego, she just disappeared, and we were like, where in the world is Carmen San Diego? Because they ended up giving my dad a full term custody of, well, or basically like temporary custody. It went from emergency protective to temporary because my mom was nowhere to be found. She had disappeared off of the face of the earth. And that was just kind of the situation. There was like 7 court dates, custody, court dates and stuff. My mom was nowhere to be seen. And so that was when it got kind of scary. We were like, yo, where's mom? You know what I'm saying? You would think that knowing my mom the way it was, after everything that happened, my mom would have been the type to where the first court appearance, she'd have came heavy pressed with the business suit on. She'd have had a lawyer. My mom was the type of person to do that. Like she would have showed up and it would have almost been one hell of an entrance. You know what I'm saying? She might have had Umi with her or something, and it would have been a whole thing. Nowhere to be seen. And that wasn't normal for the type of person, that you're dealing with. And uh, long story short, my dad got custody of me, and that was the transition into how I got to live with my dad. And as the years passed, she never turned back up. And so, a year goes by, 2 years, 3 years. I'm getting older. I was like, I think my mom isn't here with us anymore. I just had this really ominous kind of feeling that it was like, I think she's gone. And I could understand with everything she was going through. I was like, maybe she drank herself to death. Maybe she just died. Maybe I didn't know what to think. I was like, I don't know how, but in my head, she was dead. I couldn't feel her anymore for some reason. She was just gone, you know, uh, and it was hard to deal with because I was close to my mom and I cared a lot about her. But I don't know, that was something different to deal with. And then it kind of turned into like grief because I was like, after enough years, it was like, she's not coming back. It was, I wonder where she's at, to, then it starts to get to where it's like, does she even want to come back if she is alive? Did I really piss her off that bad? There was a whole lot of stuff with that. And finally, it was like, she's not coming back. 6, 7, 8 years, I'm getting older. These are birthdays you don't want to miss. Birthdays, holidays. Umi didn't know where she was. Nobody knew where my mom was, and I was like, any kind of mother wouldn't want these opportunities to pass. She's dead. I don't know what happened to her, but she died. And I settled into that. Um, through all of the other stuff I went through, I settled into that. Right before I really became a man, like when I grew up, that was the last feeling I remember from that and how it affected my childhood. It was, she's gone, she's dead, and so, you know, it was just a feeling of loss, um, you know, and confusion too because I didn't know where she went and how she got there or what happened. Um, but yeah, so now relative to me and my own personal experience with things, I'm in middle school. This is the seventh grade year. I ended up having to go to E Town Independent School because I'm going to go live with dad. Um, and seventh grade went by not too bad. Like I had a few little issues or whatever. I know I would always get popped and end up having to go to detention because I was a class clown. And I wasn't like a class clown because I wanted to be accepted. I was a class clown because I was like a nihilist. Like I was like, if you guys had any idea what I'm really going through and how I feel about it, you'd know that I have a middle finger taped to my forehead. None of this matters and none of it means anything, and I don't care about anybody. I'm surviving right now until I get strong enough to do whatever it is I want to do, and that's pretty much it. So, if you notice me, you're gonna either get a goofy mustache face or I'm gonna flick you off if you get too close because I got stuff I'm trying to figure out. And that was my whole vibe. And that got me in a lot of trouble because they had this young man, they kind of had an idea of what I had been going through who's new to this school. And from the teacher's perspective and stuff, they were like, God, he must be going through something. But I was such a dick. I was such a dickhead, and and it was all focused on the teachers. It was all focused on how I would interact with the teachers. I was like, the kids and stuff, they would laugh at some of the things I'd get caught up in because they were like, "Yo, this dude's got balls. He's talking to these teachers like it, They were like, "Yo, he's crazy," and that was more kind of the vibe, And the longer I ended up in that school, they would laugh just because it was funny. They were like, "Yo, bro, is he?" Yeah, he ain't got it all, He's a real funny guy. And that's really how they. To this day, a lot of people that see me, they almost give me that, like, and I'm like, because it. I mean, I've said legendary things to teachers that you're just not supposed to say, and some of it wasn't so explicit that I could get sent to the principal's office. But it's almost like, how would you think to say that to a teacher? You know what I'm saying? And the teacher, it would catch the teacher up because they'd be like, who the fuck do you think you are? Oh man, there was a lot of days like that, and so they caught on to it, and I would start getting in detention a lot, And my dad was like, you know, he was like, yes, you're in trouble. However, Philip, are you okay? You know, you're all right. Son of mine. You know, he was mature about it because he was like, some of it's to be expected. The way all of this happened, no, and I know this now as I've kind of grown up a bit and just saw things about I know that's where his head was at. He was trying to be patient because when he took the responsibility of me, he knew that it was gonna be some shit anyway, just because of how we would communicate, but because of what he saw was happening to me. And there was a disconnect from being able to say, well, this is obviously some how he's acting out because of what he's going through. But there was another side to it too, where it's like, to talk to him, you wouldn't think that that's what's bothering him. To talk to him, you almost get pissed off because he's so smart that he should just be doing normal kid stuff and just find his way. But he's making an effort to burn the world around him down. This kid, he just wants to he's and it came out later that I was fucking infuriated. I was mad. I've been mad for years, and it became like a deep, silent, just rage after a while. And it wasn't really at anybody, and it wasn't like a violent angry. It was just upset. And I think that's the best I've ever heard it put. There was a woman in when I went to Valley View, and this was some years later. She was like, Philip, uh, he's I don't. She said it, and it was something about her tone. But she said that poor boy is just upset. And it hit me like when she said it. It polarized me to hear it because I was like, I've never heard it put like that. But it was mad, but it was more like just a kid throwing his hands up like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? There was a lot of stuff that I couldn't wrap my own head around it. And it was stuff that was happening in my life. It was things that I couldn't avoid anyway. And before I could even get a thought in, or a comment, or a reaction, or an opinion, there was something else to be done. There was some other thing to focus on, or something else happening. And I got to where there was a big part of me that was just asleep because there was no need for me to be around, and keeping myself occupied by fucking with people was a thing that took some of the steam off, and that developed as I came to live with Dad. I became vindictive. Um, I became uh, cynical at a young age, and I was smart enough to see it before me in a way to where participating and just being a part of everything was the last thing I wanted to do. I hated everybody and everything. I hated I hated my life. I hated people that even thought it would be necessary to help me. You know, that was a big thing. I was like, you feel sorry for me? Fuck you. For what? You feel sorry? Like I was hot, man. I was mad. I was just upset because as much as I'm, the type of person that wouldn't really holler that I'm a victim of anything, the shame in it was I actually was a victim of a few things at that time. I was traumatized, and I wasn't in a place to even fucking start dealing with it. I wouldn't accept it. I was in shock in a lot of ways. I was really that whole thing had polarized me, and it came from a place that was sacred to me. I was close to my mother. I was close to my grandmother. All of these things were I whether I liked it or not, I had to believe in it. It was a part of my life, and it just, you know, and before I could even cry, before I could even get any of it out, man, that shit, it was taken from me before I even knew how to understand it. And there was loss. And I was upset. And so I grew up just bucking anything, even people that tried to help me, even people that believed in me, even people that would try to point me in the right direction and say, well, okay, we'll try this, and apply it, and teach me a way to maybe apply anything of myself or just apply myself. Not only did I give them a reason uh, or an excuse why I didn't want to participate, but then I would send them, like I would lash out at them and send them away with a taste in their mouth of me that was like, just die or something. You know what I'm saying? It was almost like they would be like, I was gonna try and help you, but you hurt my feelings, you fucking asshole. I'm not even like, and that's kind of when I adopted the like, people would be, you little shit, because I'd have moments where I guess I would do good things, or I would have good interactions with people or whatever, but then sometimes I'd wise up and I'd be like, oh God, like You were trying to help me, weren't you? I tell you what, you need to help your wife. You need to, you need to help your husband. You're worried about all these kids in this school and where we're going and where we're at. You need to go home. I've met your husband or your wife before, and I'd hit him in places like that where the irony was maybe I had a point or something, but to hear it from a 12-year-old chubby black kid, it was almost like, I don't know, it was like getting punched in the nose and you don't expect it, and it was just rough. I would lash out, and so I burned a lot of bridges before I even realized that these were bridges I could have had. These could have been good relationships with people. These people might have believed in me. A lot of people tried to help me, and it didn't. It escalated to the place where finally I had to realize there was pain in me and darkness, and I couldn't run from it. And I finally did this one last stunt where I acted out in a way that scared my father to death, and it scared a lot of people. I made some very unsavory comments about my teachers to my dad, and I basically told my dad, that I had these intentions for these teachers, and it was in a threatening manner. And it was basically poised to him where I was like, I'm so upset, Dad, that if any one of these teachers says anything to me, I'm gonna end up doing this, that, and the other. And my dad was like, it's not funny anymore. That's not that's not okay. And it's not safe because, nigga, you probably would do some stupid shit like that. I gotta get you some help. And that's literally how he reacted. He was like, he almost had to come out of the stupor of just naturally always being in conversation with me. He was like, wait, what did you say? And I was like, Dad, I was like, I'm serious. I was like, let one of them just say anything else to me, Dad, and it's gonna happen. I'm telling you. And I said, man, look, Dad, I think I had the nerve to say something to him like, look, and if it goes south and I end up getting locked up or whatever, institutionalized, or so, I said something to him to that effect where it was like, look, like it's been nice knowing you, Dad, and he was like, okay, and he got on the phone and he had a job at Conway at the time in his insurance company roundabout, but boom, I'm in Lincoln Trail. And that I remember that day. That was February the 5th of 2010. And I luckily enough for me, I didn't understand anything at that time about how mental hospitals work or any of it, or the fact that there was even help for people with mental problems. I wouldn't even be able to tell you back then that I had any kind of mental problem. I knew that life was a plaything in the sense of how I was interacting with it, and that wasn't safe or healthy. I was that upset and I was that done that life had become something I didn't take serious enough to even do anything worth a damn in my life, and I was probably headed somewhere very unsafe with the way that I was conducting myself, and so that's kind of what I had implied by being hardwired to self-destruct. It was like something about that whole thing about my early, like when I was 11, and something about that really really fried me out, and I didn't know it. I couldn't tell you. I can tell you now, years later, that mess, it bothered me, but I couldn't tell you then how much it really was affecting me. I wouldn't know to even break it down like that, and it was starting to manifest into very unhealthy things, and that's why I say it was something about my circuitry, you know, that had me poised in a way that would have gotten me in a lot of trouble because I genuinely didn't care. I didn't care, and I would have. I almost think that it wouldn't have been so much that I would have said something and somebody would have done something to me, as much as I would have gotten around people that are known for feeling the same way and done something that I wouldn't have been able to come back from. Something would have happened, or I would have gotten involved with something where by the time it played out, I was a goner anyway.
Right.
You know, I could have done something really bad, and I know that back then the way I felt and how angry I was, I didn't care. I really didn't. I didn't care, and I probably wouldn't have been able to process it if it would have happened. Whatever the consequences were, it wouldn't have. So we realized that through that, there are some sides to me that are kind of psychotic, and it got a little deeper because when I went into Lincoln Trail that first time, they had me evaluated at the Wise Cop Center and stuff like that. They had these EKGs done or whatever they're called. There was a lot there, and my dad still has those documents. He keeps them in a file, and he won't let me read them. But whatever they had revealed was that not only do I have a chemical imbalance in my brain, my neurological system, which keeps certain things from firing improperly that are hard to calculate. It can be managed with medicine, but I also have major clinical depression. And, I'm a kid from a shaky kind of upbringing in the sense that the way it happened to me, I took some fall damage, up here. So it was already kind of, I was prone to being maybe schizophrenic or something anyway, or just dealing with depression or bipolar or something in my life. But that fall damage kind of, and so I actually have a legitimate diagnosis, and sometimes it's a little hard to calculate how it's going to affect me. But when I'm not on my medicine, this becomes an issue, and and it's something that the scary part about it is when it's out of control, I'll be the last person to find out. Everybody will know something's up with Phil. I won't, and I'll go on to the end like that, and that can result in me ending up in situations that are really bad, and I won't be able to process it until it's too late. I'd be somewhere in the bottom of a prison, and some doctor would give me medicine, and when I was on my medicine long enough, I'd be like, I'm here for the rest of my life. Shit.
Oops.
Yeah. And I'd start to come to terms with everything, and the doctors would almost be ready to, as the medicine got in, I'd be talking to them and I'd be so genuine about everything. They would almost be willing to be like, well, let's reevaluate him and see if we can get him out in society. But they'd be like, no, not unless, not unless you can dose him for the rest of his life on whatever this medication is you got him on. No, without it, there's nowhere to tell where he'll end up. And he's so functional and smart in some ways that he'll slip right past so much. And whenever he gets where his destination is, the chances of something horrible happening is far greater than anything. We should not let him put himself through that. No, we're keeping him here and we're keeping him sedated, and you're fired. That's kind of, and I've seen these conversations happen. I've seen parts of my chart. I would sneak sometimes and look at that kind of stuff. And the stuff I saw, it was like, that's what's scary about it for me. I wouldn't know if I was really gone. Other people would. And then when it came to where they would try to intervene, I'd get really mad at them and stuff like that. And then it makes it hard for me to trust people and stuff. And I do get paranoid about that sometimes. Like, that's why I'm like, look, if there's something that you're uncomfortable with about me, you have to tell me. You have to tell me, because if I don't know you feel like that and I just go on, Lord God, you've been a hostage or something, literally, and I wouldn't even realize that that's what's going on. I won't realize that that's what I'm doing to you, you know. And you just are either too scared, half-assed to hurt my feelings, but also like kind of down for the plan or whatever. But but I'm just not. I'm not tracking that you're and it's just you know, um, and so yeah. And then I grew up, went through a whole lot of these hospitalizations and stuff.
Hold on. Hold on. I gotta fix your share.
Oh, okay,
No.
yeah. But so yeah, that is kind of something that scares me. in the back of my head. So a lot of the things that I do for myself now are routine. Taking my medicine, stuff like that, I have to because I've seen different ways that it can go where it's not good, and it's hard to do anything about it because, you know, reality is a blurred line for a lot of people anyway. So sometimes it's hard to really tell what a person is passionate about and whether or not they might actually have a problem and they're being serious. They're not joking around. It just sounds like that. But, it's a fine line, and a lot more people deal with this kind of stuff than you would think. But the chances of them actually getting a therapist. My dad saved my life in a lot of ways because he knew something was wrong with me and he caught it fast. And I've heard a lot of doctors tell him that. They were like, "You caught it fast enough for us to do something about it." And the exposure that he's under now to the therapy, the medication, all of this will help him later on because if he never got a hold on it, his life might be however long and very tragic or very short and just very abrupt depending on however whatever he ended up in. It's not really, you can't say for sure, but and so he did. My dad saw that there was something wrong, and I think he could almost relate to it because I think dad knows too what it's like to be upset, and I think that he saw something maybe in me that he was somehow familiar with, and he said, "No, I'm not gonna let this happen again," and he got me some help. Yeah, and I think that because my dad has admitted to kind of having anger issues and stuff like that, but I mean, he's always like, my dad's never been to jail. He's always kept a job. He was in the military. He was a good guy, but I think he just saw something where he was like, "Let me nip this in the bud the best way I can because it's my son. I don't want to send him out into the world and he ain't got his jammies on. Nah, I ain't do him like that." So, yeah, you know. Now, hospitalizations, medication, all this. There's years of all of this that I could get into. The first time I ever did drugs, hanging out with the guys at Hardin County High, you get to and stuff like that. You get to smoke weed and stuff. Especially you meet up with them after school. You know, uh, you find out about ecstasy and stuff like that just because and it's almost like they were reluctant to hang out with me too because they couldn't really get a read on me, but we all kind of went through some of the same things in school, so it was like, "Oh, hey Phil, what's going on?" I'm like, "Shit," and they're like, "Shit, bro, we was about to smoke. You smoke weed?" And I'm like, I smoke my dad's cigarettes, but sometimes, I'm saying, I ain't really smoked it before. I would, and then I'd kind of get into this rant where they would all start rolling their eyes because they knew how I could get sidetracked like that. I'd be like, "Shit, when I get to be 18, I probably will smoke weed." You know what I'm saying? Because it's sure it makes people so calm. You know what I'm saying? I see the way people act off. I probably would smoke. You know what I'm saying? They'd be like, "Philip, bro, nigga, do you want to smoke some weed with us or what?" Like, you're talking, do you want to hit this with us or not? And I'd be like, "Oh, shit, yeah, okay." I'd come over there and, waddle over there. I was a heavy kid, you know, and it would kind of, give me a little head change or whatever. I wouldn't really get high. But that was my first experience with it, somebody have a little piece of ecstasy or something they claim is acid or something, and we're chopping it, and see what it's about, or do a little line or something and see what's going on, and but I was never high. Now you fast forward, I turn 18 and I find out that legally I can smoke cigarettes. My dad was like, "Bro, you're not smoking cigarettes. Fuck you," because he's a cigarette smoker. He was like, "Fuck you, Philip. That's the last straw. You're not smoking cigarettes. I don't care what you come up with." Well, I went to the hospital. And it was I was 1 year. I had just recently turned 18, and they were like, "Well," I was 17, about to turn 18, and they were like, "Well, technically you could go to the adult unit if you wanted to. I mean, you're 17, so we'll put you on the kids unit, but you don't really have to, Philip. I mean, what you want to do?" And I was like, I'll go to the adult unit. Fuck it. I mean, I was like, that's literally what I said to him. Well, on the adult unit, they have cigarette breaks. They smoke a cigarette. And I would smoke my cigarettes there. I was already smoking the little cigarette butts that Dad had, and I got my first pack of cigarettes. Well, you know, 2 or 3 years later, uh, I'm 19, I'm 20, and my dad, he was starting to get older. I noticed he was stressed out about a lot. He's having his own adventure this whole time, and he was always very patient, very logical, and a very understanding man. My dad is probably one of the best dads to ever really dad. I mean, he was that guy. He was a dad, and he was committed to it. And he was genuine. And he gave a. My dad gave a damn about me, and he gave a damn about it all. And that's one thing you can never take away from him. He started to let me go in a way. He was like, well, I don't have to keep him sheltered. I have to keep him boxed in. And I found my ways around a lot of those rules anyway as time passed. I started getting to where I would feel out, my my adultativeness, I guess you could say. And you know, he would let it go. And I think after a while he was like, well, as long as he stays on his medicine and stuff, he'll figure it out. And he had to let that go. But part of that was him sending me to this family care home in Litchfield, and that was my idea. I was like, well, I've heard there's places where I can be around other people, and we're all adults, and we have these mental problems, and they integrate us into the community, and it's better than me just being stuck in here, while you're at work. And so he allowed it to happen. I ended up going to Litchfield. A little bit before that, I spent maybe like 6 months living with Umi, which that was rough because the original idea with that was I was going to help take care of her, but it's hard enough for me to take care of myself. And so, you know, that didn't work out, and her health actually ended up getting pretty bad. And so, you know, um, after that, that's when the final idea was for me to go to Litchfield, and I did, and I stayed there. I think it was about 2 years altogether. And out there, I mean, it was in the middle of nowhere. It was a family care home. They were good people. Again, I bucked a lot of the rules, the system, and stuff like that they had in place there at the house. But there were other parts to it too where I was like, man, you guys know this is some bullshit. So they would work with me on things. Like I ended up getting the Wi-Fi password there, and they would allow me. Over time, it ended up to where I had my own room and stuff. There were things that they allowed because it was just better, and because I kind of knew what was going on in a way. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be responsible for paying you all this money, and I mean, come on, guys, And they were like, what do you want? That kind of took a second, but and they never really, but it was decent, and so that lasted about 2 years, and then I had enough of that, and Dad was like, why don't you just come on back home, and I did, and so I went to live with my dad for probably another year and a half, but then I got my first job, and by this time I was a weed smoker because I had a buddy, and I had met him when I was younger, and I would go to Communicare, some of their groups and stuff like that, and he would be there. And he actually did some growing up, and so he ended up getting his own car, and we got back in touch. And he had a car, and I mean, once he got his car, you couldn't tell him anything. And he would come out to Litchfield and pick me up. And so, but that's how I learned about the streets offhand because I never had any money going, with him. I never had my own money. So he was like, well, I mean, if you don't want to wear that, get you something else to wear. And I'm like, what? And he was like, man, walk out of the store with it on. And I'm like, what, you going to pay for it for me? Oh, thank you. No, you're just going to go in there and get what you want. Just come out. What are they going to do? And so that would evolve into him kind of showing me the ropes, and I started learning about crime. I started learning about really getting high. I started learning more about women, I had lost my virginity at the family care home, which was against the rules, but there was females there and and stuff, and there was this one, and she was known to sexually act out anyway. And so that's I lost my virginity at the age of 19. I was a late bloomer. I never had any experiences before like that. Um, with girls, it was like I joke around with them, I got along with them, but the sex was never even a thing. I was attracted, but I was a heavy guy. I never expected, them to go for me and stuff. But we got along, and so, but this, after I lost my virginity, I'd get to go in with him. We'd get to running around. You run into a lot of different scenarios. There was real fear, violence, stuff happening, guns starting to slowly show up, and it was me and him, and we were like, Starsky and Hutch in a way. It was two young men finding out about the world in a lot of ways, but he was a little bit more experienced than I was. He knew about how to steal and get away with it. He knew how to talk to women. He knew about smoking weed. He just never really smoked it himself. He never needed it. And I started learning how to rap, and this kind of became a thing. I came into myself in a different way. I started learning about how I handled pressure in certain situations. These were some of the first times I would have been around guns and I'd have got robbed, or we'd have had guns and maybe been doing some robbing, or we'd have, found a way to find some drugs, or maybe we'd have found a way to sell some drugs, different scenarios. And keep in mind, this whole time, I'm not really giving too much of a damn about taking my medicine. So this actually started to get out of hand. And sometimes I'd have to like kind of, fall off because I would realize, that the normal reactions I was getting, I wasn't getting in certain things. And so I was like, well, but I was also starting to get more accustomed to knowing to ask for help when things were out of my control. I had communicare people that would come see me and stuff like that, and they when they would come to check in and I wasn't there, they were already on my trail. They were already hunting me down, and by the time they would find me, I needed their help anyway. And said, well, have you been taking your medicine? Yes or no, and there was this whole dynamic in that area of my life too. Um, and it got to be to where I was older now. I was probably getting close to like 20, getting up on 21. And I remember my 21st birthday on Messenger, Facebook Messenger. My mom messaged me under a fake name, but I knew it was her from her words. And she reached out. She did. She reached out to me, and you know, she wasn't dead. And that really wasn't as much of a surprise as I thought it was going to be in my life. It worked out well. She had got herself some help. She knew how to communicate with me. She had apparently found out that she, needed help herself in a way, and so she was on medicine and she had a therapist and stuff, but she was living in Seattle. And she had made uh, uh, a decision to try and make amends, and she did in a very mature and grounded way. And I was appreciative of how understanding she was in trying to get back into contact with me, and how honest and transparent she was about a lot of it. We made our peace. She came out to visit, and then I had this my last real 6 months there in Litchfield at that family care home. We're kind of reconnecting with her, which I feel like was a good blanket, in a way to get that, to have that happen in a controlled environment was good. On top of how well my mom really had become, and how she approached me, and how everything went down. It was for the best. Um, 6 months into that, I ended up going and living back with dad. My dad was kind of like, well, why don't you come on back home? But that only lasted about a year. And I remember I ended up getting my first job and I met my first girlfriend. I found out about Tinder and about, online stuff, and all of this. So I made a Tinder profile and I ended up, I had a couple experiences, but the one experience I ended up having was with my first ever real, well, she became my first ever real girlfriend. And, she would visit, and then it ended up she actually kind of almost stayed with like me at my dad's house, and we were together for quite a while. And sometimes we get mad at each other and break up and stuff, but this was like the first real. We were sexually involved. She kind of lived around me with me. We were seeing each other before that, like we were dating, and it was genuine. And then even when we weren't together, she would still come around and we would spend time together because we really like had this love for each other in a way, and I still talk to her from time to time to this day, but it's never like romantic. We're just cool with each other. We check in with each other and stuff like that every once in a blue moon. But she was a good woman, and she loved me. I'm sure, and I loved her. But yeah, we had our time, and it went. But that was around the time that this was happening, and my dad finally was like, Philip, you're smoking weed, you're drinking when you want to, you're 21 anyway, your mom's back. As long as you take your medicine, you'll be all right. You know what I'm saying? I guess it's not that big of a deal if you go and get your apartment. If you go and try and get your own stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna fight you on it anymore. And so he was like, but I'm not giving up because he had adult guardianship over me at the time. He made sure that when I was like 18, and so he kept a watchful eye over me when I moved into my first apartment. But that crashed and burned. Ooh, God. And I mean, it went good. About a 6 to 8 months of just I was doing the thing, and my girlfriend at the time was kind of staying there on and off. We'd have our little spats, and she would leave and stuff, but she lived with me more often than not. And my dad, because he was my guardian, would pay for the utilities, the bills out of my money, but he was my fiduciary. So I didn't really have to worry about anything but just living every day, you know. And we had a bad breakup. Me and this woman, and I mean, it was coming at the time in a way too, because I was starting to. There was a part of me too that was also getting older in other ways. Like I stopped eating so much. I started being more responsible in other ways. I ended up getting a cat, and that was my first ever cat, Lucy. And I treated her like she was my daughter. It was like this my child. This my baby. Yeah, and I was serious. I was serious about it. I was close to that cat. I loved the shit out of that cat. And me and my girlfriend and this cat, we kind of had like this impromptu family. But there were parts of me that was changing. I was starting to lose weight, and I was working out and stuff too, and my mind was getting better. I was staying on my medicine, but I was also kind of dealing with a lot of other stuff on my own, and I started to where it was like I could feel myself kind of forming this cocoon around myself. I was just like, I need to get away from people, and I need to start to sort of reflect on a lot of this stuff that I'd been through. I was developing into an I at this point. A lot of this stuff was happening to me, and I was going through it, and I was dealing with it, but there was a me that was missing. And I became a lot more self-aware. There was stuff that I was like, you know, I don't have to deal with this from other people. I don't have to deal with this at all. I'm grown now. There's stuff that maybe I should be a bit more responsible for. I should start getting serious about some stuff. I should figure out what it is I'm going to do. And, I was in a good place, but I was also in a dangerous place because I was changing nonetheless, and change always hurts. Growing up hurts. Oh, yeah, and but yeah, growing and stuff hurts, and it damaged my relationship with my girlfriend at the time. There were certain things that I realized she was putting me through that you really only learn in dealing with a woman over time or from experience. You can't teach a young man something like that. But there are certain things where you have to realize that you are a woman and I am a man. And I said no, and I mean no. And if you don't like that shit, I couldn't care because I'm not you, and I'm not like you, and you're not like me. And that comes from experience after a while, being able to just kind of have that. I, I'm a man, man. And it was happening later than I think it does for a lot of other people. Um, but because I kind of was predisposed to having a hard time because of the way my brain is, this came at the time it did. And she was patient with me, but then she was finally like some of the stuff that I started getting the balls to say to her. She was finally like, I mean, it's you got a point, but still though, like you know what I'm saying. Your anger is getting a little, you know what I'm saying. It's like, what are we doing here? And we had a bad argument where I had told her that I was like, man, basically, if you don't like it, get the fuck out. And she didn't like that, you know. And to hurt me, she was like, you know what? Okay, no, no, you know what? Fine. And instead of being like, I'll leave, she was like, I'm leaving you. And that one, I didn't expect that to hurt so bad. I thought I was a young man. You and she was like, nah, I'm leaving you. And she meant that shit. God, and she left one day, and it did, and then that was my first like hardcore breakup. And I mean, she left me alone in that house by myself, uh, and that hurt. And so she took the weed with her, and I didn't really know much about dealing with people. I hadn't really hung out with that one friend in a while. I had spent a lot of time around her, and it was like me and her. But we did smoke weed, and then it was like when we would go out socially and stuff around other people, she always had the keys in a way. It was that kind of shit. It was like, this is my boyfriend and stuff. And so that's how I had any of the experiences I did. And she drove. She had her own car, so it was kind of, that was part of it. When she left, I was alone, alone, alone. And it took a while for me to get out of that stupor to find my own peace in a way. And that evolution I was kind of talking about started to come back, and it was like there were pieces of me that broke and pieces of me that healed and pieces of me that grew. Um, Ironically enough, throughout this whole thing, I had forgotten to take my medicine. I was going through a lot of it because I wasn't taking my medicine, and so the stuff I thought was making sense was really, I was slowly starting to lose my mind, but I was losing my mind, and this was different. Um, I was in my own space, and there were no more drugs, and I could sometimes muster up enough quarters, and I would go and get 40s from the store down the street, and that was my thing. I would drink Steel Reserves, and I'd get drunk enough to go to sleep sometimes, you know, and that was a thing, you know. I would drink a lot, but I couldn't always afford it. So that kind of became a thing. Like when I could afford it, I would get, my smokes, and I would get my drink because I was 21 and I could actually go into the store and buy it. And so I would forget to take my medicine. I did for a while. Forgot to take my medicine, and I had my first psychotic break, my first real one, my first real break, and it came like a manic episode, but it was like it had a left hook that was crazy. I lost look man, I lost my fucking mind over the course of like a week, and it was destructive. It was physically violent. I scared I scared people, but then it started that cared about me. But then I actually started to scare myself because I realized that I was losing control. Like when somebody said, "Oh, I'm gonna lose my mind," like I'm gonna lose control. You hear people say that kind of stuff, and it starts to sound. It's so there. People say that so much that it loses its meaning. But I was losing control over myself, and this being that I had started to understand me. I was becoming a me finally, and oh man, all sense of logic and rationale went out the window, and there was such a passion to it, and then a lot of that hurt from when I was a kid was starting to come back, and I was upset, but it was like a different kind of anger, and I remember feeling like I couldn't hold it in. And one night, me and my dad got into a really bad argument on the phone, and he called the police on me. And he wasn't even there. He was on the phone. But this is how much what I was saying was bothering him in terms of me being in this house or this apartment by myself and just not being in a good place mentally. And so they would come and do wellness checks on me. And I think it was like two or three of them in one night. And finally, the next, because there was one night I didn't have any sleep, no sleep whatsoever. And I would call my dad, and we were back and forth on the phone, and there was like two wellness checks in the same night, and I would calm down enough and talk them out of it, and they would leave. But this third one, I was outside in the morning, and I was like, I had drove myself so mad that I was punching and kicking this the dumpster for the apartment complex. It's crazy because I mean, they're made of iron or whatever. Like you don't do that. But I mean, I was out there and I was so mad that I was like, bam, bam. I mean, if you ever look, you can see on my hands. Like I have scars all on my hands, and I look at them sometimes because all of these were from times that I had lost control, and there wouldn't be any body left to be mad at, and I would. And so I was out there. I was punching and kicking the dumpster, the waste management dumpster, and the cops got called on me. And when he came out, and when he got out of the car, he saw me, bam, 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 I'm kicking, and he didn't play with me. He was like, "You're under arrest," but he arrested me for disorderly conduct, and that was my first ever time in jail. And from there, I actually got sent to because I had actually served out my time. I was in jail a little longer than I could actually rationalize. So I was in there for like 2 or 3 days, and then they sent me from there to Life Springs at Hard Memorial. And then from there, they had where Judge Simcoe came in, and he had like a meeting with us, and they sat me at the table. They said, "Look, you're in a place right now where," and I mean, keep in mind, me personally, what I'm going through on the unit at Life Springs was totally different than all of these big things that I'm explaining are happening. Because that was a lot. But I mean, there's only so many ways you can say you're crazy. But I was acting out, and they would have to sedate me a lot. They came and they hit me with the shot, that they'll put it in your butt, or sometimes they'll put it in your arm if that's all they can do. And At one point, they actually restrained me. I was in these straps. I was in. They took me down to my underwear. Security was like on the unit the whole time. They just wouldn't leave because they knew like sometimes if I don't know how else to say this, but when I was like that mentally, I was so off, and I was so like active at the time, and not like like I did sports active, but I was just so on in my head that you would think I was just the most charismatic, interesting, cool, haha person or whatever, but it would be like sometimes people would say things and it would trigger me, and I swear you would my eyes would change. It was like I would smell blood, like a shark in the water that smells blood and their eyes turn black. And that's the only way I know how, because I would get a whiff of something off of people sometimes. It would just be like, and I would zone in on them and I'd be like, ooh, and it would get me hot. And I'd be like, and in my mind, you could not convince me that I was wrong about it. That whatever judgment I had placed on this person for whatever, and a lot of times it was directed at staff. It was rarely ever the people I was there with. It was just like, y'all are supposed to be responsible for the system you have us subjected to or whatever. I'm like, I I dare you to not have your shirt tucked in. I dare you to fart and be responsible for my life. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes the nurse would say something and it would hit me bad, and I'd be like, ooh, and I mean, I would feel my body tense up and stuff like that. And they, and that's when you would see like the security guards and stuff would come in, and I'd be getting hot. I'd be like, woo, woo, woo. My veins would be popping out, and I'm getting, and they're like, they can't even get me down to the point where they're like, you're crazy and you don't even understand. Like, that's not even what was going on. Like, that's not, we mean you no harm. You know what I'm saying? You're not in a good place mentally right now. It was almost like, no, just. And so they would the security people, they would intervene, and then the nurses or whatever, they'd be like, now are you gonna cooperate? And I'd be like, what do you, and then all, and sometimes it took a little bit to kind of get me down. But finally, yeah, they had me in my underwear, I remember, and I was strapped to this bed, and they had a nurse, because I mean I couldn't, I was laying like this, and they had a nurse, and she was on close watch, but she was nice. We got to talking and stuff, and you know, she she kind of talked me through some things, and I think she was actually willing to hear me. And yeah, so but pieces are moving on the outside of this, and finally, the doctors and stuff like that, they've reached out, and Judge Simcoe actually ended up signing off, and it was an MIW basically, but it was one where I was good. I was gonna have to get myself together for a while. Like, it was basically I was being committed to this treatment, and because my dad was my guardian, it actually had to be a legal process. And my dad was at this place too, where he was like, I really can't. I can't take care of him anymore. If this is how bad he's gonna get, I don't know. And he's grown. There's only so much I can do. I work full time. There's only so much that I can really do to even help him. And um, take this burden from me. I care about my son. I'll be there for him. You know that. But I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to put him in a worse situation. I'm not a professional. And so that was kind of how, when I got admitted to Central State from Life Springs, via that MIW, that was the transition of how I got put into adult guardianship. The state became my guardian. I became a ward of state. And initially, looking back on it, when I got checked into Central State, I really don't know if they had planned for me to get out. Um, that was a heavy. That's a heavy facility to get sent to. People talk about it sometimes. Oh, I've been to Central State. You look at the logistics side of what that place is and what it represents. That's a serious place to get sent to. And that's one of those places. In order to even go there, there's really no choice. You can't really. I mean, I don't know how it is to this day, but you can't just walk up to the Central State door and be like, "I need help," and they let you in like you can Lincoln Trail or something. It's not that kind of place. You get sent to Central State, and usually it's a legal process that sends you there. While I was in there, I forgot how long I was actually in there. I never really could figure that out. I had a daily bread. They had those daily bread books, and I remember I would make notches in it, and I kept up with it for a certain amount of time. How long? But one daily bread is about a month's worth, or I think some of them are like a couple of months or 3 months or something. But you could get those from the missionary carts, and I made these notches, and I would use the daily bread to keep because there was some policy they had where like you couldn't have there were no clocks in your room, and there was one main clock at the nurse's station, and it was a dial clock, but if you weren't allowed to be in the hallway you couldn't even look at that. You know what I'm saying? And it only told the time. It didn't have the date and all that kind of stuff. And for some reason they were allowed in that place to run a lot of different kind of evaluations on you, and they could put different restrictions on you. Like they actually had me under some stuff one time where I was not allowed to have verbal contact with any other patient on the unit. And I mean, they were serious about that. They were like, I had escorts, nurses escorted me everywhere. Those techs, and if somebody was like somebody, there would be two people sitting next to me, even if I went into the TV room. Or sometimes they would just because there were two different day rooms. Sometimes they would say, "Well, they're in this one. You go to this one if you want to watch a little TV." Because I was behaving myself, you know. But if somebody walked in and was like, "Yo, Phil, you good?" or something from the hallway, they'd be like, and they'd be like, "Phil, you say one thing and we'll extend it." No, and I mean, they were doing it to see. They could do that. No rules against that kind of stuff. Um, there was a lot of different stuff I went through in there. That was almost a little like it had me questioning a lot. But part of it was there were certain times where there was information you didn't have access to because it wasn't good for you. They could take away your phone calls, your right to even make phone calls. All of that stuff was on the table, and so and I was on the unit where you had the people that were there, uh, you know, they were criminally insane. So you had a couple of guys in there that actually did murder somebody, and they were found criminally insane. That were there forever. There was two or three guys there that had been there for years, and they were never gonna leave that unit, and they weren't even allowed to go off the unit for certain activities and stuff. They were there, a couple of them. And I was like, what's up with those guys? And they were like, they're never getting out of here. And I remember there was this younger guy too. He was in there, and it was crazy because the way they explained it to me is like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Shutter Island, but in that movie, the you find out towards the end that and look, when I watched that movie after I got out of that place, and this was years later, I was like, you know what? That reminds me of that. Because there was one guy that was convinced that all he had to do was call his wife and he could get out of that place. And I mean, this would be weeks at a time. Sometime this was something that I would witness, off in the just off to the side, and I would notice. And I mean, when they would break him and bring him back to whatever, he would lose his mind. And I mean, that was almost worse than what I was putting people through. If you brought him back in touch with what was really going on, because apparently he was never getting out of that place. He would, I mean, and what haunted me was his screams. His screams, you could feel that each and every time they reminded him of that, he would relive that whole, and he would realize that he was never getting out of there. And I mean, he would scream from his soul. You could hear it. He was actually upset about that. And I mean, I'll never forget that. That bothered me because I was like, damn, like how does he not remember this? You know what I'm saying? But he didn't, you know. And so there was stuff there, you know. It took a while, and it took a lot of medicine, and it took a lot of time. However long I was there, I really actually don't remember because the year that I left that apartment and to the whenever I was released from Central State, there's that transition. I'm missing a lot of the context. I remember a lot of what was going on, but the amount of time and what year was here and the specifics, I couldn't tell you. I know I was in my early 20s, and that was right after my first apartment. And I know in the process I lost Lucy. Lucy, my cat, was gone. My dad gave her up because of the apartment. And I asked him on the phone while I was in Central State. I was like, look, don't send her to the pound. I was like, just open the door and let her go, Dad. I was, you know, because she would jump out of the window sometime, or I would let her out of the front door, but she would come back. She was a good cat, and I said, just don't force her to go to. And he did. He took her to the pound, and I remember he told me, and the way he told me was like he forgot what it meant to me on the phone when I was telling him that. And oh man, I remember that day. I snapped. I started hitting. I was bashing the phone. I threw my notebook and stuff like that. It was bad. I was losing my mind in there because that was important to me. You know, you don't lock up my daughter like you lock up your son. You fucking piece of shit. Oh man, it was I was going in on him for that. I was like, you couldn't even take care of me, Dad. I was like, don't force my children to have to go through what I'm going. You would do the same thing to my child, wouldn't you? It's like you son of a bitch. I was losing my mind in there about that day, man. I had it. I was oh man, that was bad. So anyway, you know, I mean, I get out of Central State sometime later, you know, and I ended up having to do a while at ACSU because they were trying to figure out what to do, and they put me in contact with the ACT team, and these were the people that were going to be responsible for my treatment and stuff like this, and that set the context where all of my drug use and everything came into play. I moved after all of this. They gave me a fresh start. They put me on the ACT team, and they had me in a program for people that the ACT team. The way it's set up is they are trying to it's called assertive community treatment, and it's for people that have a lot of hospitalizations and stuff, a lot of institutionalization in their life. They're trying to get them away from needing that and back into the community to live as just a person, to be as close to a normal person as they can. That's what they're for, and it's a whole team of people, and they come out to you and they try and get you in a way where you be more social, but you're also taking your meds, and they acclimate you to what it's like living in society. And I was on that team, and so they'd come visit me, and they got me my own apartment. And that was when I lived on Bellwood, and I did my time on the ACT team for a while. I mean, you know, ups and downs. They would come check on me, they'd give me my medicine and stuff. But then I started kind of taking up a leadership role with some of the other people that they had, some of the other clients, because sometimes they would bunch us up and we'd get to go do like these little socials and stuff, or like they would take us to go volunteer places, and you got to kind of meet other people that were in the same program. And I was approached from one of the people on the team, like, hey man, you know, why don't we make you, we're going to start what is known as a role model program, where people that are doing good but also are kind of also exceeding and maybe in a position to give other people hope in this program. You know, you can kind of set the tone, and we might have you, you know, lead a group every once in a while, you know, or something, and you kind of, we want you to be the ringleader of all of these people so that we can kind of help them to be more social in a way, but from somebody that's done it. And so they were kind of, you know, and I was getting to a place where, yeah, I was on my medicine a lot. I had this apartment for a while. I was still ward of state. I was under state guardianship, but my guardian, she was cool. She would pay my bills and stuff, and then I would even get like $100 allowance, you know, every week and stuff. And they, you know, um, And I was somebody that some of the other people kind of looked up to in a way. You know, they would come over to my apartment or something. Sometimes even, you know, we'd hang out. Uh, but that old friend came back around, and so then I was living like a double life because I was the weed man too, and my mistake, I think, in retrospect, was selling weed to other clients and shit. And there was even there was even there was even some staff interactions that got a little out of hand. That's how I met my wife. Well, my really it's an ex fiance. We got married, but we never did the ceremony, and so we had the marriage certificate, but it ended up getting annulled because we never completed the ceremony. So in some systems, I'm actually technically married to this woman, but we're not together, and we never really got married. It was never a ceremony, but we went and signed the paper and all. So, but it was annulled. It's not in effect anymore. So we're not actually married. I might still talk to her and stuff sometimes. But anyway, I'm sitting in her car, you know, we're talking, and I'm telling her about how I feel and stuff, and she had described to me that I deserve better, and I was like, deserve better like what? And she was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, like me, I guess. And I was like, what the heck? You know, it took me off guard, and I really didn't want her to see. I didn't want her to see how much that one really threw. You know, like I didn't want to react and be like, "Wow," you know, because I mean, she was on the act team and it was exciting for me. I was like, you know what, that's kind of crazy. I was like, I can't, but you know, me and you know, just somebody talk, I'd be like, man, I can't believe I pulled her. Like I wasn't even trying, and I really didn't know she would risk it all like that for somebody like me. It was mind blowing. I was like, phew. And upon elaboration of that, we got to talking about it and stuff. So we decided, you know, we'd start talking, and I'm having all these different elements going on, and yeah, that one hit me like a ton of bricks. You know, when I met her, she was it was a lot, you know, and it kind of messed up things in the future for me with a lot of relationships or just with interacting with people, because in a sense she was kind of there to take care of me in a way. She was somebody that I had figured to be a part of my treatment team. So this has made therapy and stuff like that a little interesting for me ever since, you know, and that's something I still struggle with. But you know, I manage. You know, it wasn't so much bad. It was just I really didn't know how to process it. It worked out for the best, but that was a bit of an issue. Now the real issue was, you know, this person at the time had a bit of a habit, and this is when I was first introduced to using methamphetamines. And you know, the first time I got high, I remember thinking, you know, you know, a lot of people say it about meth, but the first thought was, "Oh, this isn't so bad," you know, and that's what's crazy about it is you know when you do it, it at first it really it's not. It's not scary. It's not like acid or LSD where you know you can have these trips where you realities. But no, I mean you feel really good. You feel motivated. You know, creative. You can focus. A lot of energy. Sex usually actually. I mean, it feels really good. The issue though is the longer you use it, you start realizing that you need that feeling. You need that clarity. You need that energy, and when you don't have it, you know, anybody that's ever had their first come down, it'll tell you it's almost worse than it's kind of like what being dead would feel like if you were still alive and conscious, because it takes everything out of you, your mind. It even messes up how you see and how you move. Your body does it, and you realize how exhausted you are, how thirsty you are, how hungry you are. You realize how little you've been taking care of yourself for a long time. And that's kind of I think anybody that is their drug of choice, that's definitely, I mean, for me, it's motivation not to do it again, because to jump back in it once you've had some sober time, it's not worth the come down, and everybody has to come down, and so that was kind of a thing. And she introduced me to this, and we would get high, and then we would come down together, but we would drink to deal with coming down. And whether were on a binge where we were doing meth or not, it was kind of like drinking was never a good idea with me and her. She would drink and I would drink, and it would start good. You were talking, vibing, okay. But then we would get into these conversations where you know, real shots were being thrown about things that, you kind of have to deal with as an adult, or at least you have more of a perception about when you're an adult. So things like how you came up, how you were raised, and the fact that, she kind of was like almost my therapist at one point in time. She was my peer support specialist, however, or she was for the team, and stuff. So she had more of a background than I realized because she had seen my chart, she had seen my case. She knew more about me than I realized she knew, and then in a way, she knew more about me than I knew about myself because of how things sometimes are written from a medical standpoint. When they put certain terms in these documents, it's not the same as talking to another person. These are medical references. These are diagnoses. These are symptomatic, charted behaviors and stuff. And so she knew what professionals thought about me in a different way. And these were the same professionals that I was interacting with on a daily basis. And this would come out a lot when the filter was off during the drinking. And sometimes she'd throw in a little shot or something. And I mean, I'm pretty slick mouthed too. So, sometimes I'd say something back and it'd really get under her skin. And we would have these huge fights. I mean, really bad. And so, but this was coming down off of meth and drinking. This was even worse. This was like, okay, now there's violence. Um, and I was the type, I usually kept a firearm around. She kept a firearm on her. And things got to be really dangerous. Uh, she had a car, she drove. I would drive her car sometimes. I would be driving, she would be driving, and we're under the influence, just crazy kind of things going on. Both of us have weapons in the car, and it was just it was unhealthy and it wasn't safe. And you know she had a daughter, and I was starting to become a part of the life, with 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 the family and stuff, and I was kind of being a father figure for her, and I was close to her. I took her in as one of my own. It was I treated her like she was my daughter, and I don't have any kids, but I loved and cared for her, and I wanted great things for us and this family that I was kind of coming into, and there were some things that had escalated to a point with her, that it could nothing be done, and we weren't safe to be around each other. And being around each other was being in enemy territory, and that was just the way it was. And so she left. And I don't blame her. She left. She actually had enough. And it's not the first time in my life that's happened, but you know, um, that one hurt me the worst because I felt like I was I had a family that I earned, and I felt like I was good enough to earn that. Um, and I didn't know if I was. I don't know if I'm infertile or not, or I don't even know if I really have any kids. Because sometimes I've had these estranged flings and stuff with you know, and I'll never see these women again. And I don't know. Maybe part of the reason they disappeared is maybe I did get them pregnant or something, and I just, you know, I hope, but from the outside looking in, I don't think I would have been a person somebody would feel comfortable telling me, you know, out, that I had a kid, with them, because they wouldn't know how I would react or what I would do. That is serious, and so maybe the way they met me, if they were to get pregnant, it would almost kind of be like, I don't know, sure. Telling them is the last thing. I don't even know where he is. Maybe in some instances they might not know my name, where I'm at, and so. But anyway, so having this chance to have a real family was important to me, and I lost it. Um, and now I was strung out on drugs. And this came at a time where drugs, that particular drug, meth, was easy to get at that time. It had kind of flooded Radcliffe at one time, and it was just like, you know, you you go to a restaurant and get a cheeseburger and fries, they're gonna throw you a complimentary bag of dope in with it, uh, and I got hooked onto it bad, and in my love sick whatever, that kind of had me doing all kinds of crazy dangerous things. That wasn't what I was used to, and I was sick. And at this point, despite being programmed to self-destruct, I had hit the countdown sequence. So now it was just a matter of time before I completely destroyed myself and my life. And I was okay with that, and I was almost celebrating the occasion. I was kind of like, all right, well, I'm going down. Whatever I got in me that's left that means anything, that was worth anything, I'm going to make this look good. And I'm going down in flames. That way, if you remember anything, you remember that I tried. And that maybe, I don't know, in some kind of bittersweet way it could have been. But, if I'm going down for whatever it meant to me and whatever it was worth to everybody else. And that sequence had initiated, and I was just, whew. Now, the saving grace in that, I had decided to call an old love of mine, and this was a woman that never gave up on me. This is my wife now, and I mean, still to this day, she stands by me, uh, but I called her, and I was like, hey, what you doing? And she was like, hey. And it was the same vibe. She still cared about me. And I said, look, you think maybe I can come visit you sometime or something and just say hi? She said, where are you at? And I said, I'm in Radcliffe. I done lost my apartment and all this. And I don't know. I think something's wrong with me. I'm sick. She said, you come home. I was like, what? She's like, just come. You remember where I live, right? I said, yeah. She said, you come home. You stay with me. I said, damn. Then this whole kind of thing about I don't deserve it, and oh God, I actually for a second had a reluctancy to stay on the phone with her because I said I'm about to ruin her life, and I've done that once. I left her originally in a way because we were kind of actively seeing each other at that time for this woman that I got involved with that got me strung out on dope. And she still to this day hasn't forgiven me for that. I think now that I'm with her, it's a little different than how it used to make her feel, but that one hurt her. I told her I basically said, I can't do this anymore. I've met somebody, there's someone else, and I wish you the best. I love you and stuff, um, but I just can't, and I really, and I mean, oof, God, that was a horrible, horrible thing for her to go through. And it actually, her reaction to it, I actually remember that hurting me, but uh, ugh, you know, that poor girl. But I'm with her now, and we're making things work. So I mean, and I'm trying to do better by her, and I'm staying faithful. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Uh, you know, I got us our home back, but anyway, she invited me to come back and stay with her in E Town, um, and I did because I had lost my apartment. I was strung out, and I needed somewhere to go, and I wasn't really in a place yet to accept homelessness, and so I went. That lasted about a year and a half, and you know, the lifestyle I was living, I couldn't get away from, and I was hurt. I was sick in ways I didn't realize when I had told her. I was actually sick, mentally, as well as chemically from the drug and from the comings and goings of coming up and down and chasing the drug and all of that, and I it started to get to where I scared her. She could realize that I just wasn't the same person that I was when we were kind of doing our thing, and uh, I actually scared her, you know. And so this one day we're arguing, which we really never. I mean, we argue, but it's more like banter. But this one day we really got into it. And I said, so what is it? I was like, what, you don't believe in me anymore? You don't trust me? And but you don't love me no more, and that's kind of because she was basically trying to say, like, you're not healthy for me. She was like, motherfucker, I'm about to lose everything I have, and it's settling in with me that, you can't just go around taking chances on men. I'm a grown woman, Philip. She was like, to some extent, I have to care enough about myself to have a house and have a life. She's like, you can't just come in here and what, you gonna kill me too? You know what I'm saying? And so I said, what, you don't love me no more? And she said, I don't know. And it was the way she said it. Ooh, that shit hurt, dude. Ah, man, that one. It hurt me so bad. I don't know if I'll ever deal with that one. Cause the way, man, I heard something in her voice. She meant that shit. She was scared and she was hurt and she meant that shit when she said it. She was like, it was almost like you disgust, like you. I can't believe I even ever, And I said, huh, how like those divas or whatever, those bougie women, you know, because I didn't know how to take it. I was almost like, ugh. And the wheels started. I grabbed my book bag. I left her that day, and I never came back. I spent 4 years figuring out what homelessness was, and I was so heartbroken, so sick off of the drugs anyway, that I didn't give anything a chance ever again when it came to love. You know, I've given her a chance in a sense because I had a chance to talk to her a couple of times towards the end of my homelessness, and I was kind of like, I'm sorry, and I would apologize, and I said I try to make things right, and we would talk, and it was just communication. I'd be at some sober living home, or I'd be just out of jail or something during the 4 years I was homeless, and I would reach out to her, just coming, touching down back in to town in a sense, and just like trying to see what resources I might have, or who remembers me or who knows me. Because my homelessness was everywhere. I was one of those nomads. I lived out of a book bag, and I never really stayed still. I was one of those wandering people. Like if the zombie apocalypse ever broke out, I'd be one of those zombies that would be just on the outskirts of town. I'd be one of those stragglers that catch you slipping in the wilderness or something, because I was really every day. I just walked. And depending on what time of the day and where the light was and stuff like that, I would remember people that might be in certain places that maybe I can go get some water from their house. That person actually might let me shower up. So and so might have some dope or something to help me get my mind together a little bit. I know bro's always got the snacks. And that lady, you know what I'm saying? I know she likes me, so if she's home or whatever, and I might be able to put the 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 Rizonator 5,000 on her, and see if maybe she. I know she's got a closet full of blankets. I could use a blanket, and these wheels would be turning as I'm walking wherever. And I mean, I was homeless in Scott County, homeless in Lexington, downtown Lexington, like where all the buildings are, and kind of on the outskirts and stuff. I was homeless in Jasmine County, Nicholasville, um, and sometimes I'd get caught up in little stuff, and I'd get arrested in a place I wasn't from, and then I'd get released like 3 days later. But I'd have a warrant in Hardin County, and so I was kind of on this cross country tour. And sometimes the places I was staying was from getting locked up, or sometimes I'd have these moments of clarity where I would seek help, and then I would somehow, I'd get to talking to somebody, and they'd be like, if you don't want to live like this anymore, I know a place, and they'd give me some help. But they'd go, oh, the only thing we have open is in Scott County or something, because there is a step works up there some kind of way. And but they were like, we'll have to send you there, and then they would send me there and stuff, and I'd get kicked out of the place in like 2 days because I didn't really know what was going on. And I wind up at the hospital or something, and uh, they're trying to. The sheriff done took me there to get an evaluate, or like a wellness check almost, like I don't know, maybe and then I get belligerent with one of the nurses, and then end up getting arrested there, and then so and somehow I gotta find a ride back to. There was just, I mean, I was a wanderer, but that was my 4 years. It was just a lot of. I mean, there were some highs and lows. There were times where I would get enough drugs to I would be able to run around and sell, just from meeting people at gas stations and stuff. I'd be able to sell enough sometimes to have some money. I could get some food. Uh, I, or if I had like a lot of weed or something, you know, then I could sell the weed to actually get my drug of choice. But then I'd have a few extra dollars to get some food. I would eat, go to sleep for 2 days, and then I would get high when I woke up. Um, Sometimes people would catch me in the right light, and if it was a place I wasn't from, they'd be like, well, where are you from? And I'm not from here. But they would realize that I kind of knew about trapping a little bit, and so they said, well, I tell you what, why don't you come down to wherever this is at? And they'd take me to the place where, the dope spot, and then I would try to catch an odd job or something, uh, find somebody to front me some drugs or something, and and these different things was just, I mean, it was all I had to do. It's just the next best move to survive. Uh, but then sometimes, you get into these things, and you're on foot, and you're living out of a book bag, and that's a hard cover, to pull off sometimes. And so if you really get into trouble with some of those people that are in the streets and they're scary and stuff, and they got guns, and it's hard to figure out an escape plan, or if I don't know. It's just, there was a lot to it. So probably about a year and a half, 2 years into it, something broke, and I was just down for the count, and I started walking. and various things would stop me from walking. Sometimes, you know, uh, the winter getting closer. You know, even if I really wasn't serious about getting help, I would try to get somewhere because some of those nights were so cold that unless you had a building for cover, if you got snowed on, there was a couple mornings I almost died. You know, because in my sleep I'm freezing to death, and the shock, the snow will melt and the water hits your body because your body is giving off heat. But I unwrapped myself and didn't realize it was gonna start like freezing rain or something. And so once the moisture would penetrate whatever blanket or whatever I was using, it would hit that ice cold water would hit my body, and I would wake up. And I'd be, it was, oh God, you wake up in the middle of a storm like that, and you realize how cold you are. You can't feel your hands and stuff, and whatever was dry, I'd usually have some kind of that lamp oil and stuff was stuff you could find butane or something, and I would just start a makeshift fire, and I would throw all of the clothes and blankets I had there, get my hands warm enough and my body warm enough to move, and once I could really move, I would take off running, and I would just, I don't know, sometimes a gas station, a hospital, depending on where I was at, and I would, or what time it was. In the middle of the night, sometimes the only thing that's open is like a hospital or a gas station. You just go in there and you try to run in before the person at the register sees you, and you get in there and you just kind of warm up, the warm water, and you just, and then the dryer dry off whatever clothes you got, because you walk back out into that coldness. You can't be moist at all, because then you're really going down, especially if from there you got to find another place to go, you know. Yeah, it was a lot of shit. And when you come down uh, in a house with heating and cooling and plenty of water, that's that's bad enough. When you're coming down in detox at some place, that's bad enough. But if you're coming down on the street, your survival, what's survival to you takes up whatever juice you got left.
So I've only known sober Philip.
Mm.
Uh, what was the turning point that made you decide to quit drugs and to seek a different path?
Uh it would have been when I got arrested. This last charge I caught was a felony, and it was a possession of methamphetamines, and that's a felony. And it was my first ever felony that I mean, there was no fighting it. I've gotten charged before, but this was like, man, I mean, I'm going to jail, and at the arraignment there was no, oh, you want to take this, you going to take a possession charge at trial. And when I went down hard, because this happened as I was getting into needle use. I had found out about shooting, and I was really high, and I was starting to, I guess, develop what was kind of like narcolepsy. So I would pass out places, and I really didn't realize that I had fallen asleep. And I couldn't really control when these times would be. And so apparently I had passed out, and somebody, I guess, thought, I was dead, or I don't really know how it would have happened, but I got up, realized that I was asleep, and I was in these bushes in that trail in front of Roses, and apparently there was some guy who had either he had stolen a bicycle or something, but the cops were actually on to him. And I woke up and I had a crushed pack of cigarettes. I grabbed one cigarette and I walked over to the bench, and I went, before I could light it up, they said, hey, let me see some hands. And there was the police. And they arrested me. And they handcuffed me thinking that I was that person that they were checking, because I guess they didn't have good whatever, but they found out that I didn't fit the description, but they had already searched me and they found and so I heard the cops talk and they were like, well, this isn't the, but he does, so we're gonna go ahead and charge him with possession and stuff. I got thrown in jail, and I was very high, but I had to come down in jail. And I was in jail actually that time for a while. It was almost 2 months. And yeah, that's not a while in jail, but I mean, usually the stuff I get sent to jail for, you get out after a couple of days, or once you figure out the arraignment, they put you in some kind of probation or something. I had never really gotten jammed up for a felony. And I was in jail for like 2 months, coming down the worst of it. And finally they said, well, we'll give you a pretrial diversion. I went to court and they gave me that. That's where they release you. You're a felon, and you just check in with your PO and stuff like that. And you can walk off the time, and get that charge expunged after a while, and you sign a contract that gets you out of jail. Okay. I got out and I had one last fit where I was kind of like, because as soon as I got out, apparently I had a holder on me in Scott County for missing court from a charge that I caught a while back. So I went to the hospital to try and get some help, and this was shortly after I got out of jail. I went to see my PO. He realized I was homeless. There wasn't really a place they could get me, so he just said, hang tight for a while, and we'll try to figure something out. Just come back and see me such and such a day. In the meantime, I got high and I got scared because now the walls were closing in. And I went to the hospital and I was basically like, I'm trying to kill myself. And that's I said that because I knew that they would take me in, you know. But in a way, I think I was crying for help because I was like, damn, I really am trying to kill myself and I just haven't really figured it out yet. I can't seem to get it done. And so either I need some help or I just got to get better at doing this shit because I haven't died yet. And I was in a real volatile place. And something happened and they actually didn't even let me, they didn't admit me. And so I was kind of like going off with the people in the lobby, and I was like, man, fuck y'all, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of, whoop de whoop. The police were outside responding to something else, and I didn't realize they were out there, and they snatched me up, took me to jail back to jail on a disorderly conduct, on a pretrial diversion. And when I got there, they were like, you know what? We don't even. You need to get to Scott County and figure out what's going on with that. I get to Scott County, and the judge releases me on time served. And I get out, and then I ended up being in Scott County for like a month or two. They told me it's better for homeless people in Lexington. Got to Lexington, contacted my parole officer to figure out whatever I could. He was like, just get an address, we'll go from there. We might be able to get you switched over to Fayette County. I met a guy in the park, long story short, and this guy was, he was a big recovery dude. And, he was like, man, you know what I'm saying? If you're serious, you want some help, got a place to get you. And so he put it in the spin, and they got me to this place in Nicholasville, Jasmine County. And this was like a rehab place. I didn't last too long in there. I lasted about 2 weeks, and I got paid and checked my account from using their phone. I knew how to call the operator and ask, and give him my credentials. I found out how much money I had, and I said, okay, I'm leaving. This was about July the first, had to have been, of 2022. And 3 or 4 days I lasted in Jasmine County, just getting high, that desperado dumb shit I'd been doing for a while. And July 4th, I remember being at the park and the fireworks were going off and stuff, and me and God kind of had a coming to terms. I was yelling in the park, cussing, fussing, and I was just so upset, you know. I said, man, you know, I can't even die right. Lord knows life ain't worth living right now. You know, I said, I'm not worth a fuck right now, so there's no point in even trying anymore to fix my life. I said, you know, all of this, and you just won't let me go. You know, I said, man, I haven't been able to get it right since I've been here. God, I haven't even had the chance to. And I was like, you know, and you string me along and you stop me every time I get something or somewhere, you know, and it's just like, you know, so me and God were hashing out, fireworks are booming. And the next morning I woke up in the park and I had my blanket. I still got that blanket to this day. Uh, and I wrapped the blanket around me and I started walking again. I was going to start wandering for the day. And the police came and got me. They pulled up on me and said, whoa, buddy, what's going on? I was like, I just kept walking because, you know, sometimes you keep walking and stuff.
Leave you alone.
Yeah, you know, like maybe they're not talking to me. And, hey, buddy, you. And then one of them was just, you know, I mean, he woke up and had his dick for breakfast. He was like, hey, yeah, I'm talking to you. Stop. And, you know, you always know when a cop pokes you in your chest because it feels a little bit more sober than you are. It's just like, ow, oh shit, okay, hello, good morning, officer. How you doing? You know, and he was like, what's going on today? And I was like, man, obviously there's nothing going on today, man. I was honestly trying to find a place to go get some breakfast. I don't feel too good, officer. He was like, go ahead and give me your name, you know. And he runs it down. And I was like, I prefer not to, you know. I said, you know, and he was like, why can't you give me your name? I said, because I don't want any problems, man. I'm honestly, I'm hungry, and I just want, I'm thirsty too. Like I really just want to go somewhere and get something to eat real quick. I don't want no smoke, you know. And he was like, you know, why don't you just go ahead and give me your name? We can figure this whole thing out. I said, no. I said, what am I being detained? He was like, you know what? Yeah, you're being detained. Why don't you go ahead and put your hands behind your back? They ran my name. I finally gave it to him. I said, you cooperate, this go a lot better. I gave him my name, and he ran it down. He was like, whoop, whoop. I heard the dispatcher, like, she had the walkie, and she was like, you know, and I don't know all of their terms or whatever, but basically what I heard was, he's going down. Go ahead and bring him back. And I was like, well, it's over. And so, yeah, I stayed in Jessamine County for like a week. They expedited me to Fayette County, where I had another failure to appear. They got me knocked out for that. Okay, so come to find out, they were, well, the judge, well, we can get you released today. You know, it's time served. Okay, I was like, bet. And you know, 3 o'clock rolls around. It's after court. I'm back in my cell. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. 7:30, 8. You know, I done got my dinner tray and stuff already. I hit the buzzer and I'm like, so the judge said I could go home today, and they were like, what's your last name? I said, Peterson. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, you said Peterson? I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, apparently, Mr. Peterson, you have a holder on you from Hardin County. And so basically, we're just waiting on them to come pick you up. I was like, well, how long is that gonna take? He said, well, I mean, uh, sometimes it takes quite a long time. You know, we can hold you. I think he said we can hold you up to 90 days or something like that. It was something. So I was like, and this is already. Already been in Fayette County maybe like 2 weeks, and you're in these pods by yourself. And so, you know, um, I ended up being there probably altogether maybe a little over a month. By a couple of days I was in there. And I remember having this conversation with myself in the mirror one night. Because you're in these cells by yourself, you know, and it's just your cot, and it's kind of, you're in these rows of cells. You know, you can't really see anybody in your pod, you're separated, and you can see that it's like a medical unit, hospital unit. And I was talking to myself in the mirror, and I actually apologized to myself, and that and I was kind of having like this. I was trying to snap myself out of some stuff. I was like, man, Philip, we fucked up, dude, and I swear for the life of me, I looked at myself in the mirror almost. I don't know if I don't want to say it was a hallucination, but I think it was almost just my mind playing tricks on me. But I gave myself this look from the mirror that was basically like, yeah, I mean we're fucked, and it was bad, dude. I mean, and it just brought me to tears. I started crying. I was like, shit, we tried though, didn't we? And I mean, you did the best you could, Philip. And something came to me. I said, you know what? I don't know if all of this AA stuff or any of it, despite the exposure I've had to self help, I don't know if any of it's real. I think a lot of it's bullshit anyway, but if they give me a chance to fix this, I'm going to do it. I owe it to myself. I owe it. I owe it to you. I said, I haven't taken very good care of you, Philip. You know, uh, and I said, it's all right. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And I said, man, I should have took better care of you. And I said, I'll tell you what. We get out of here. We're just gonna do it. Just we can fix this. Uh, yeah. And that was my commitment to myself, and I've upheld it this far.
I know you've fixed some relationships.
Yeah.
So, how's life changed since getting sober?
Well, come to find out, I'm actually quite a lot sharper when I am sober. I thought the drugs brought out whatever in me, whatever creative, but no, when I'm sober, I'm actually pretty sharp. I've managed to keep a 4.0 the entire time I've been in school. I go to Colorado Tech, and I'm studying to get my bachelor's of science in psychology. And so I'm not trying to be clinical. I'm not trying to be a counselor or a therapist, but I want to do the research and the bookkeeping and book writing and stuff like that for the field of psychology. So I kind of want to be somebody who does conduct surveys and experiments and kind of, you know, puts the background to a lot of the things that are going on in the mental health world. I want to help find out stuff that can help. I don't really want to be somebody talks to. It's easy to, you know, not really help anybody like that. I mean, a career of it, as a therapist, I've learned enough in studying and from talking to therapists on a professional level. They said, well, look, if I've told them my intention, they were like, if that's your intention, go into it from a logistic side. Be the one doing the surveys, be the one doing the research and stuff. And, there's more people that are needed in the black and white, and people that have an understanding, the real statistics concerning how we treat these people. And I was like, it's not a bad idea. I don't like to read. I like to write, and stuff. So, you know, um, but yeah, I'm pursuing my bachelor now. I got 50. I just finished my finals for my laboratory course and the science course that the laboratory course belonged to. So the science course, the lab was 1.5 credits, and the course itself was like, each one of them was like 4.5. So I just let me see, that's 6 credits altogether. If it's 4.5, and then it's 6. I keep sometimes the half will throw me off, but so with those 6 credits plus the 48 and a half I got, eh, almost 52, right? No, 50, oh, math. Uh, well, 48 plus 6, it's 54. 54 credits. I hope. But I finished the final. That's probably one of the reasons that was such a. But I finished the finals yesterday, and so I'm on a week break. And when I get 90 credits, I'm gonna celebrate because 90 is technically an associate's degree, And I feel like that would be a nice mark. I never thought I'd get a degree. I started school once before, but never got this far. So.
Besides school, how's your life changed?
Well, um, I'm actually sober for the first time in a long time, which allows me to process different things. My sense of self is better. I have a natural confidence. I'm healthier. Um, I've kind of developed a passion for working out and stuff because the doctor was telling me some of my stats weren't really adding up, and so when you first get in recovery, you want to eat a lot and whatnot. But I've started exercising now, and that's a way that I can pursue different things that make me feel good. You lift a different weight, you can do a certain amount of cardio, and I've met a lot of friends now that are in the program that are doing this sober thing where they're trying to work out, and it's becoming like it's a subculture in the recovery world, the workouters. Uh, and so I'm dealing with that. The relationships with people has gotten a lot better. Me and my mom and my dad talk a lot, and they actually treat me like an adult that they believe in to be able to take care of himself. So there's a different kind of level of conversation we have. They don't get on to me as much, and we actually talk. And my mom came and visited not too long ago, and it was like me, her, and my dad just chilling out. Like it has been like that the last couple of times she's visited, and I would have never thought. They actually took me to the science fair, and I got to hold my mom and my dad's hand, and we was in the sun. Man, look, and this time when she came, we went horseback riding, and I got a picture that was. I told them I was like when I got the picture, I was like I could die today, and I'm straight. That's the fact that you can get all three of us on horseback, smiling, and it was such a regal photo. We were just, and my mom, and my dad. I mean, you got to know my dad. You'll never see this man around horses, and it was such a, and the photo we got, I mean, look, that was cash money. And I was like, look, I could die tonight, and I will have accomplished enough. And I think to answer your question, in the one consistent year, I've been sober, but in these last 3 years of recovery, I've accomplished enough to die at peace. There's a lot I want to accomplish. There's a lot I want to get into, learn about. I've made my peace. you know, and that's better than self-destructing. Because now I'd be like, all right, well, at least I fixed my program, and maybe my batteries will kind of die out. I just kind of,
Retire on
or something. Yeah, but yeah, I've done enough that as long as I don't do anything uh, worse or that bad from here, I'll be just fine.
So, what habits have you incorporated in your daily routine to maintain this level of sobriety and progression?
Every day I get up and I do make my bed. I live with my wife and I live with my cat, so I feed my cat. But I get in the shower and I take my medicine and go to the gym every day, every morning during the week, except Fridays, because Fridays I have a lot of groups at Communicare, and I like going to those just because. but I'm usually at Communicare for a while on Friday. But Monday through Thursday for sure, I go to the gym in the morning. And then right after that, I go to high noon. And then after high noon, which is an AA meeting, after high noon, usually I'll go home, or I'll run some kind of errand that I can get done in between, and I'll go home. I take a nap, which I swear by naps. In recovery, you need more sleep than you think. You need sleep sometimes more than you need food for comfort. And so, but that's a pro tip, because usually you have to earn naps in recovery. You got to make sure you get all of the stuff done that your program requires you, and then when you're done, allow yourself to take a nap. Don't feel bad about that. Your sleep is very important when you're coming down from a lot of those drugs chemically. Neurologically, you just sleep, rest. So I'll usually take a nap, and then I get up, straighten up the house. I work on my schoolwork, and I try to put together a little dinner. And um, me and my wife, we watch a lot of movies. We keep up with different shows, and we kind of just keep into that. We'll have some kind of conversation, and we get our snuggles. I love snuggling her. It's so, you keep you warm and you fall right asleep. And I go to sleep. Daily routine wise, in order to manage though my sobriety, I stay active. I stay in the rooms, the AA rooms, um, even different self help stuff I've been to. I've been to NA. I would consider going to anger management if I could find one that. But I also go to group therapy. I go to DTR. I go to some of the little church functions they have, where it's a little bit, I guess, more faith based, and I kind of listen to what they have to say. Um, so yeah, staying involved, because recovery is more than just sobriety. Sobriety is key to your recovery. You have to get away from the drugs for a second, or the alcohol. But a lot of it too is recovering from all of the damage you've done to yourself in your life. And so when you're in places where self help, or where learning, or where behavioral health, mental health, are these elements are present, then these are places where you're gonna find a lot of your recovery, or your motivation to recover. You're gonna find a lot of stuff, information about things you can incorporate into your life and into your routine, and that kind of keeps you in an atmosphere of it. So just exposure to a lot of it. I do leads. Um, I'll go and do leads at the lighthouse a lot sometimes, where I just talk to the new guys that are there. And sometimes I even just go and hang out with them, because there's a building where the new guys go, and it's usually just the people that are early in there. And I'll just sit with them sometimes and just, chop it up. And because I've graduated, I'm alumni. So sometimes I go there, and it's not like I'm going in there to flex, because I hate people that do that. But I go in there and really just see where everybody's heads is at, and they ask me a lot of questions too. Like, they look at me like I don't know. They look at me like I'm a new and improved. I don't know. They almost like a mascot or something. They poke me and say, hey, can you do this, or what do you think about that? And it's interesting, because I'm actually at a place where the information I give them, I guess in a sense, maybe it does help them. I'll be like, well, I mean, this is kind of how that works, and that's kind of how this works and stuff. But you kind of see that depending on how grounded you are, and depending on the type of information you give them, you give these people hope to kind of keep going. You give them a reason to want to get to recover, and they see something in me that I don't really see in myself on a daily basis. They're like, man, this guy's doing it. Some of them that I've run across in the sober living places and stuff, like I was actually in the streets with. And that's interesting too, because they were like, whoa, no, I remember you, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, shit. You know what I'm saying? What do you remember, guy? And They'll be like, "Oh, well, and I'm like, and they're like, man, you look like you're doing pretty good, man. You was out there, look, you was out there, you was, yeah, yeah." And when we get to chopping them, sometimes I've noticed that the real miracle is I get to get up next to them and be like, "Look, I know the kind of shit we all used to do and stuff. I know you know them people, man, this shit really works, it really works, you know, just sit still and just commit." And then be like, I mean, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm not joking, and it allows me to kind of go back in, and I swear they believe me because I'm in a place they know I'm not. I wouldn't lie to them anyway about something like that, and they ask me in a way where it's like, look, man, just be straight up. If this is like a cult or if this is some bullshit, let me know. And I'm like, dude, some of it is in the sense of the people you run into, but this shit actually works. Like, and I always tell you, stay sober, you take your medicine, keep a job, and have a consistent place to live. Like, this is a place you actually live. Those four things, no matter what happens to you in life, you'll be all right. If you stay sober, you take your medicine, you keep a job some kind of way to earn your money, and it's legal, and you have a place to live, you will be just fine. The rest will work itself out. Well, and another one I'll throw in is like, go to some kind of self help, and just go to community care, get you a therapist, or show up to like an AA meeting or something. Like keep yourself around something like that. Go to a group therapy, find some kind of something. But those five things, for sure, no matter what you find yourself in life, you you will be okay if you have those five things, and each one of them are just as important as the other. And I always tell them, one of those five links goes missing, you're headed you're headed back. One of them goes off. It's not, oh, I can do these three, but just I said, if any of those are like the five like talismans of recovery, like the five elements, like you have to have all five. One of them being missing or one of them sort of working one day and not the other. No, fuck all that. Make sure you have all five. You'll be just fine. You'll figure the rest out. But a lot of stuff will actually fall in your lap. That's pretty good. And they believe me and they can. It's the truth. It's the truth. It is the truth.
So, to close this out, what's your message to the world?
Just say no. Say no to drugs. Say no to alcohol. Say no to all of the corny stuff in school that they said. Them dare programs and all that stuff. Yo, they were right. Just say no to drugs and alcohol, and give a fuck about your life, please. Cause it's hard for other people to do it for you. Some people will try, but you really have got to care about yourself. You owe it to yourself. Care about yourself. Please, take care of yourself. Please.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Always a pleasure.